of using it and also look at new ones. I think that's the first big part. I think on a more global level, we need to find a new approach, how the new technology, the decarbonized technology, can be accelerated in the rollout to the developing and the emerging markets, because I think that would make a big step. That's the first point. The second point, obviously, we have also heard it in speeches before, to ensure that there is the right political framework, because that's needed to accelerate. Just think of, diesel, think of coal, think of new technologies, think of CO2 pricing and so on. So the second one is really to set the right political scheme, and obviously that's very country or continent specific. And then the next one, the third one, would be to link the funding, whatever funding it is, global, regional, local, to a green tech or decarbonization result. Not just to give the money, but also link the money to a little bit of decarbonization. There's a lot of money out there, and I think that will certainly help. And the fourth point would be, for me, similar as this European Union Commissioner Moedas has done it, to create a very good collaborative platform between the government and the industries and the NGOs. And I think the event here today and tomorrow is a very, very good starting point, but I think in each country, in each region, it has to be done again, because as I said at the beginning, we can only jointly solve the CO2 problem that we have in our world. So that would be my 4 points.
Thank you. Okay, David.
Thank you. Excellent points. I would encourage the nurturing of creative play, because all good ideas come from a playful heart. And we need the diversification of ideas. We need for people to find the hidden opportunities, not the obvious opportunities. So how can we create cultures that encourage our children to play, our adults to play as well, and then a nice low-cost digital infrastructure that can span the globe gives an opportunity for entrepreneurship, where that one original idea that nobody saw, but a child in sub-Saharan Africa sees it and starts a new billion-dollar company, or a child in the middle of the Inuit tribes maybe finds some opportunity that was missing, or somebody in inner city in the United States finds a new opportunity. But the playfulness, the opportunity to play, that's where the creative risk taking. And it's not about failure, it's about finding hidden opportunities. And then the final point that I think could help is for us to see if we can start to peg money and the currency value and money value to actual net benefit and cost, which means cost on the ecosystem, cost on human rights, cost on our future. Because money is worthless if there is no future. You could peg it to the gold, you could peg it to real estate, it doesn't matter if there is nothing that can grow on the lands of the future. And so in that sense, I think we need to look at the valuation of net benefit and get really smart about assessing that. And then the valuation of new companies for that sort of long-term benefit becomes a lot more profound. That's a hard thing to do. I mean, the Sustainable Development Goals are one step in that direction, and they're measurable and they're quantifiable. But it can't just be the cost of fines, which is drawing currency. It has to be like that there is a massive boost for those companies that move forward. and I would say all the tools that we have for doing intelligence work, for open intelligence in assessing net benefit, AI, human metrics, the metrics of organizations like all the organizations of the United Nations coming to play on establishing that currency value.
You mentioned, David, you mentioned measuring, you mentioned the measurability of the Sustainable Development Goals. Are any of you using technology or high-tech, low-tech, or no-tech, as we like to say, to get metrics on where we're at with the Sustainable Development Goals or where your organization or initiative is in terms of metrics? Barbara.
Absolutely. I think without that, progress is very difficult. Yeah. And obviously, what's important in companies, once you have identified the opportunity and the business case, then really to identify also very few non-financial KPIs. For instance, it could be revenues in green lighting. It has to do with employment satisfaction. It has to do with making factories greener and more energy efficient and so on. So to really create an internal board to measure your own performance. And for me, still today, the best way of measuring the external positioning is the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. And I'm sure many of you know it. If not, it's worth looking at it. There are some 400 questions that need to be filled out by companies. And it's really an overall view on good housekeeping. It starts with corporate governance, it goes to strategy, it goes to technologies, it goes to operations and so on, it goes to compliance. It touches every field of a company's operation. And then it obviously compares you with other players. And then obviously once you are there and you are sort of the winner, it's great. Obviously, not just for you, but more importantly, it's fantastic for the employees. It's very good for customers and other stakeholders. So these are the two, the internal ones. I think that's important to have it more and more. And then obviously also this measurement with the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, where you can compare yourself to your peers.
Thank you. Alexandra, are you doing anything at the Impact Hub to measure progress around the goals?
Yeah, so we have adopted the SDGs as our key framework throughout the Impact Hub network. And in our program Accelerate 2030, this is one of the key elements where we're working on, because if you're not measuring the impact, what you are achieving as a startup or as a scale-up, you have nothing to prove, and you have to. It's a key element to, alongside financial KPIs, to be able to put in your impact KPIs as well, so that you can measure your achievements. We are working on this, but it is still a struggle, and it's also a struggle in the entrepreneur world when working with impact investors and others, that there are many different frameworks that are used. Different investors are using different type of frameworks. And I think here, and yeah, we know the amount of targets and the amount of goals, etc. I think there's work definitely needed in this domain to make, particularly for smaller scale businesses, also to harmonize some of these impact measurement elements, and so that we have like a common language to speak globally as well. But definitely this is one of the key elements what we are working with.
And and this is for anybody who would like to address this, is there any one goal or set of goals that are more at the forefront of your business than others? I'm really leaning toward, I believe it's goal 16, it might be 15 though, it's around fair institutions for justice and peace, because without those in place, the other goals don't stand a chance. But are there goals from your business perspective that you're really putting a lot of muscle into?
So at Impact Hub Geneva, we run this global acceleration program, but our key focus is on the activities that we do in Switzerland. We have looked deeply, what is it here in this country, in this region, what is the SDG that is where we can have the most impact, and what is the key issue in this country, which is a developed country, and many factors and poverty, etc., might not play such a key role. In Switzerland, yeah, we would need 3 planets if everyone was to live like we do in this country. So for us, SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, is the key work that we're doing. We just launched a 3-year initiatives with all impact hubs and across 5 cities in Switzerland on exploring how we can move business towards circular business models. And so yeah, for us, it's this topic. It depends in every context and across different impact hubs. What's key is that it has to be locally relevant, but in Switzerland we have at least identified this as one of the key issues that we can have an effect. Also because SDG 12 is not just something that's effective here in Switzerland, but about 70% of the effects are in developing and emerging countries as well. So for us it's SDG 12.
Great, thank you. So I lied earlier, I've actually got 1 or 2 more questions because we have to stretch a little bit. Was there ever a moment in either of your businesses, your trajectory, your career trajectory, because you're all game changers, where you thought that you weren't going to make it, where you thought that you weren't going to rise to the challenge and make your initiative or your business a success, and how did you push that forward? And why and when did you decide to make positive social impact a part of your business?
It's interesting because we're a startup, just 6 years old. So I would say there hasn't been any moment in there hasn't been any moment in the last 6 years that we were simply not trying to die, because you're trying to make sure that you survive in the environment. You're constantly trying to figure out, because we're creating an entirely new industry in the continent. It didn't really exist in the same way it existed in other developed markets. So it was a constant struggle, but I think the way in which we, if I look back now, the way in which we were able to survive and therefore get to where we are now, this side of the curve, if you put it that way, is constantly innovating in a manner that is relevant to the environment in which we operate. And I gave some examples earlier. There are many other examples like that. So that's just the only way to make it happen. The parallels from other markets, from the US or from Europe, they just didn't apply in our own environment. So we constantly had to innovate, and innovate in a thrifty way, I think is the way I would put it. Not necessarily innovation that requires a lot of investment and capital outlay, but innovation that addresses the needs, but still in a very thrifty way, because we just have to keep going and of course survive.
We call it scrappy in America. You have to be a scrappy startup.
So exactly.
Scrappy, yeah. Scrappy. David, what about you? You were making an interesting face when I asked that question, so I feel like the gears were turning.
Oh, there have been so many times that were precarious, and then we're still a relatively small AI and robotics company compared to many large and mature AI robotics companies, and our goals are really big. We want to change the world for the better with AI that really cares about people and understands people. And so the future effectively is uncertain, and how that technology can come into existence fully, how it can really reach our goals. When did we adopt these goals? Before the company was founded. It was founded with the intention to make the world a better place.